Hello, good to see you here in Helsinki. Hi there.
Nice to meet you.
Take a seat. I don't know how much you managed to catch of that discussion, but Finnair very much promising that sustainable aviation fuels are a part of the future. In the wider picture of climate change, do either of you have a viewpoint there on how much they can really make an impact, given the planetary boundary challenges we're facing?
I think that we need very wide range of means to be successful in climate mitigation, and these renewable fuels is one component, renewable energy, electric vehicles, our diet and so forth. We need a set of solutions to be successful in climate mitigation.
Mari?
And I think when we look at the big picture, so when we produce clean energy, that would be best to use directly, if possible, to electrified processes. Then, if needed, to make hydrogen, and then to the fuel. So I will see that the most effective use of green energy is maybe elsewhere, but then there is maybe a certain fraction of the excess that could be used to make biohydrogen, green fuels, and then there will be evidently still use of the carbon-based fuels, so it's a debate that where to use those.
Yeah, and it's a debate that I think will continue. But interesting to hear your perspectives about them perhaps not becoming completely mainstream yet and needing other solutions as well. Let's just talk a bit more broadly about climate change and the weather. I mean, there have been notable heat waves here in the Nordics over the summer that made global headlines. Petteri, how much is that down to climate change? How much can we say for sure?
So we have, of course, this kind of natural variability as well, but the fact that we have been breaking records in our climate practically everywhere in the world, that's a consequence of climate change. But we should be careful not to explain all these weather variations with climate change. But we have just broken this 1.5 degrees limit of warming. And here in Finland, we have broken 3 degrees warming, and we have started seeing growing amount of drought problems, which are affecting our food production ability, and we have seen flooding problems. We are facing more often these most intense tropical storms, hurricanes, typhoons, cyclones. There are just a couple of those hitting Eastern Asia, for example.
Yeah, and so here in Northern Europe, people that have been maybe enjoying the warmer weather despite knowing that there could be a link to climate change. What is the danger of repeated heat waves like the ones we've seen in recent years?
So my main concern is related to our ability to provide food for the growing global population. So, for example, in Africa, we are going to have 4 billion inhabitants by the end of this century. At the same time, the conditions for food production will be much worse. We will see more often drought and higher temperatures and so forth. And when we talk about economy, which is of course the topic here, the World Economic Forum has estimated that already at the next decade we will see major negative impacts on global economy because of growing amount of weather extremes.
It's a very complex issue. Mari, you're here to tell us about some of the developments in new materials which are hopefully going to help tackle climate change by being implemented in different industries in the economy. Can you first tell us which industries are most at risk because of materials running out?
Well, I would say that all this green transition is hugely dependent on minerals and metals. So if we talk about clean energy production, it's much more metal intensive than the coal or natural gas. If we think of storing of the energy, even hydrogen energy catalyzing metals. So all this transition is deeply dependent on rare earth metals, for example, permanent magnets, wind energy, electric vehicles, and not to talk about the copper, because all this electrification is so copper intensive that one of these most common metals actually has become now most critical.
So your focus is on recovering and recycling critical raw materials, particularly lithium, which is essential for batteries and other cleaner, greener technologies. Why is that so central to solving the puzzle?
Well, lithium is one of the elements, but we have the transition metals, we have the catalyzing precious metals, and as said, so For example, windmill, it takes 10 to 15 times more minerals compared to natural gas. So we can't make this transition without mining more. We need excessively more mining, and we need to learn recycle much better. Lithium has not been recycled other than since during the last couple of years. So it's only starting. We are only starting to take more out of that ore or metals from the recycled raw materials that we have in hands.
So what types of innovations are around to try and solve these problems, and which other innovations are needed still?
Well, one great example is innovation of Maija and Kirsi Yliniemi from Aalto University. We invented this kind of pulsating electrolysis, total new way of tailored pulsing, patented it. It was pinned out from Aalto 22, and now the company is selling this technology for critical and precious metals recovery. For example, platinum in Argor-Heraus in Switzerland, all the time recovering more that was possible earlier. So we work on this kind of method innovations. We work also on modeling the energy mass consumption, environmental footprint, and electrification of also chemical industry processes.
Do we have the time we need to help develop them, though? We were hearing earlier about how close we are to crossing almost all of the planetary boundaries. So you could argue that we're going to see systemic shifts, we're going to see the impacts of climate change before some of these innovations actually become mainstream.
We need to heavily focus also on this semi-long term, 5 to 10 years, because time is really limited and green transition goes so fast that I think we need to select topics where it's realistic innovations are possible. And then at the same time, of course, basic research is of importance, but we need to heavily prioritize our funding where it goes.
Petteri?
So when it comes to climate mitigation, we have started acting, and we are lucky to have a growing amount of means to be successful in climate mitigation. For example, the prices of solar and wind energy, they have been dropping under the prices of fossil fuels, the prices of batteries and electric vehicles. They are all the time dropping, and we are no more heading towards 5 degrees warming, which was still the message from science community 10 years ago. We are now heading towards 2.5 to 3 degrees warming, and from my perspective, it's not out of question that we would be able to reach 2 degrees target. 1.5 is going to be very challenging, but we have hope, and thanks to the engineering community, we have growing amount of means to be successful in climate change. And there's global action going on, and this is not a 100-meter sprint, but it's a marathon. We have a couple of decades time to change our system, and this change is happening. And let's see whether we are able to reach.
Yeah, a surprisingly optimistic perspective than I was expecting from a meteorologist. Mari, what do you think?
I think that is our only chance to be optimistic, and also I believe we can have a lot of impact, so it's also very motivating.
And I know you're quite engaged in what's happening at the EU level. Let's just talk a little bit about that. The EU has gained momentum when it comes to green industrial policy over the last few years, particularly with the Critical Raw Materials Act. That's been effective since 2023, and it sets tougher targets for mining, processing, and recycling key materials. How is that helping to fund and shape research priorities, innovation partnerships? Are you seeing the impact of that in academia?
Of course, it helps to exactly see those ones that maybe are the most actual questions for us to reach politically, but there is also know-how behind them, so it highlights the increased circularity, recovery of less and less low amounts of elements, more of mining, also in Europe, more free refining, better reuse. So I think the ideas there, they are very much aligning with the actual research topics that we then need to find and success and communicate that how big the impact can be if they are successful. So definitely it helps.
And what more would you like to see from the policy level, nationally, internationally?
Well, I would absolutely like to see really people acknowledging the mining industry, that we like to talk about recycling, we like to fund recycling, but what we need, we can't get all this material we need from the recycling. we would need to put 90% of the funding, research and innovation funding, on supporting sustainable mining, new mining, valorization of the side streams. So I think people want to avoid, political people want to avoid, the research people want to avoid taking responsibility of that we are hugely dependent on that, and that would deserve much more focus in research and development.
Yeah, I mean, we're all responsible, and we talked with some of our earlier guests about we can make progress here in this region or in Europe, but there's still things happening in other parts of the world. And we can't really have this conversation without talking about what's happening in the US, where sustainability has dropped off the agenda, is not a priority at the moment. With the US stepping back, do you think there's a risk, both of you, that companies in Europe, particularly in this tough economic times, are just going to do the bare minimum now rather than going the extra mile?
I think that the big picture is that in Europe we are dependent on imported fossil fuels, and it makes sense to get rid of those and replace them with non-fossil solutions. And we have learned with this war in Ukraine that what Russia can do with their fossil resources. That's one.
So in a way, it's been a helpful warning to do things here.
And also this new economy is an opportunity. And I was just a couple of weeks ago in China, and I saw how they are gaining from this transition. They're the market leaders of solar, wind technology. They have become the biggest manufacturer of electric vehicles. So this transition is also a business opportunity, and also the Europeans could gain from this. And once we talk about the attractiveness of the companies for the young employees, the young employees are more eager to work for companies which are dealing with sustainable things, and that's also an issue. And I have seen this mental change in Europe and also worldwide, and that's fairly encouraging.
Yeah, I fully agree that, like Simon said yesterday, so we should keep our eye on this infinite game. It's long term, it's not 2 years. And their circularity, sustainability, actually it quite often walks hand in hand with material and energy efficiency. So it will be and will become the competitive edge business opportunity. It might be not in 1 year or second year that, but it will become anyway the competence when you invest on that.
Okay. So just taking it back to the individual company level then, as we mentioned, it's been a sluggish growth in Europe. People are worried about their targets and their margins. But what would you like businesses here to take away? That, I mean, thank you for all of you who've shown up to this panel. It's not the best attended panel. So what can we do to make sure that businesses are still prioritizing sustainability when they've got so much to think about as well right now? Petteri?
I think of course, these businesses, they have to be beneficial, and we have to make sure that the business is profitable. But we can have lots of profitable businesses also in this field. And we are very lucky that we have fairly innovative private sector in Europe, and they are innovating new means to be successful in climate mitigation and also adaptation. So we need to adapt to the climate change as well. And for example, in Finland we have a company called Vaisala, which is the biggest manufacturer of meteorological instruments, and we have to invest, for example, in the early warning service businesses, which is an opportunity of Finland type of countries.
Mari?
Yeah, maybe I would give the advice that while we have the quarterly targets and certain rules of the business, so remember to keep the long-term view, to keep contact with students, the future makers, keep up the dialogue with the academy that does longer-term or research institutes the longer-term research. So this way, it's not sacrifice. It's actually giving benefit for your and your companies like competence in the long term. So I think it's a benefit. Consider it as a benefit if you face a diploma worker that wants to interview you. You might learn something and you might be more competitive in the next years, which will be very volatile.
Super. Well, thank you so much for joining us here in the HS Visio studio to share your perspectives. And I'm sure you'll both be around if people want to find out more about sustainability in the last few networking breaks. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.